though he is a 35-year-old, relatively statuesque pocket passer at this point in his career, he is a guy that can operate from the pocket and move you up and down the field and score a lot of points. Welcome into the Hot Read Podcast for Monday, October the 2nd. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I'm joined, as always, by my favorite Bengals fan, producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Runke. JT, how's your day been? How you doing?
It's been all right, doing good. I got a little too sunburnt today because why did I think that I needed to wear sunscreen in October? It was a beautiful 90-degree October day here in Nashville,
Tennessee.
I'm a little sunburned, as you can see my rosy red cheeks here. But we're here, we're vibing.
Mm-hmm. We're going to start off today's episode where we have to start off, and that is, of course, with my own personal betting and wanting to hear the opinions of the people. And this is pertinent to the time. I know that Sunday night football is about to begin. And before we dive into all things Titans, which we're going to do today, should I let a parlay ride that is going to turn $1 into $150? It is the parlay I place each and every week that I self-termed the in case I got literally everything right parlay, where just all the sides, I throw them in there. I put $1 on it in case a nice little bonus in case I'm right about everything. It's pending Jets plus 10. What do we think? I can cash it out for 75 fast dollar dues right now. Or I can let that ride, and I've got about 15 minutes to decide here.
If you believe in the show, you let it ride. If you don't,
I do like the side.
But however, a 75 times return on your investment is pretty sweet.
Those are some nice stonks right there. Yeah, it's an easy, fast $75, and it is tempting.
I would take it out.
But I think but I didn't place a $1 prayer bet to give up on it now. It's $1.
Okay, but then all your bets next week are covered. So
it's not enough money. I'm sick. That's not nearly enough money. All right, let's talk about what actually matters today, and that's Titans Bengals. The Titans get a very, very, very dominant victory over the Cincinnati Bengals on the heels of a very, very, very dominant loss. Dominant victory by the Browns over them by the same score. They lose in week 3, 27-3 in Cleveland. They face their second of 4 AFC North opponents in week 4 here in Nashville and handle the Bengals 27-3. Got already some folks in the comments talking about it. Our buddy Paul, Deagle, William, appreciate you guys being with us. Kind of a weird start to the episode today because I'm so interested in my own personal betting that I've thrown out the convention of our episodes, and let's get back on track here. We're talking all things Titans Bengals today, a little bit earlier than typical on a Sunday evening as we're recording this, because I typically write a winners and losers column at the end of each Titans game. But for the second consecutive week, JT, that's been made very difficult for me. Maybe I should just have written a 2-week joint article reviewing winners and losers from week 3 and 4, because I would have plenty of both to go through.
There's still time in the day.
I mean, there is. Last week I had nothing but losers, and this week I sat there in the press box to write some losers down, and I came up with a couple that we'll talk about today, but they all have asterisks next to them because it's like they're not really losers, and they're kind of nitpicks on what was an otherwise really fantastic game. So we'll dive into all of that. 2 things before we get into that. First of all, if you're with us live, appreciate you being here with us on a Sunday evening. Do us 2 favors. One, if you're watching on Facebook or Twitter, head on over to the Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. It's Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. You'll find this live stream, and you can join the others that are there in commenting on that live stream video and being a part of the conversation. Would love for today's episode to largely be involving you guys. Any questions or comments you have on the heels of a dominant Titans victory. Would love to discuss what you thought about this game. And if you are not already subscribed to the Broadway Sports Media YouTube page, do us a favor. It's free. It helps us out. Hit that subscribe button right underneath the video. We're trying to get those numbers up. We know that a lot of you that watch aren't subscribed. Do us a favor and subscribe real quick. Again, it is free. It costs you nothing. It's free real estate. Please help us out. by hitting that subscribe button. Also, got to shout out our wonderful and amazing sponsor, BoomBozz Pizza, here at the top of the show. We are sponsored by BoomBozz. They have 3 locations here in Middle Tennessee. BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse does. We are live every Thursday from their Spring Hill location, which is our favorite, but they also have locations in East Nashville and in Murfreesboro, as well as in Indiana and Kentucky. They are fantastic at what they do, JT, and what they do is make delicious pizza. We love their food. We look every week on Thursday forward to going there and doing our show live before Thursday Night Football. But really, if we're being honest with ourselves, we're looking forward to getting the show over with so we can eat the delicious food and have an excuse to go eat and drink all of the fantastic offerings they have. They are 4-time winners at the Las Vegas International Pizza Expo for a variety of different pizza options. They are the only pizza company in America to have won Best Pizza in America twice, according to the international pizza competitions. They are great at making pizza. It is pizza that you have never tried before, I guarantee you, and it is going to revolutionize the way that you look at the pizza industry and consider your options whenever you're getting a hankering for a pizza pie. BoomBozz will be at or near the top of your list after you visit there just once. I can guarantee it. So go and check out BoomBozz, our wonderful and fantastic sponsor. All right. Now, I have vamped long enough to get people in here for us to get all the housekeeping out of the way. Let's dive into what was a big and necessary win for the Titans. First of all, we've got some condolences for you, JT, in the comments from our buddy Paul. He wants to hear you take your licks for why you disliked Wiley. Paul, of all of the angles you could have attacked JT from today, and there were plenty, you chose a weird one because Josh Wiley stood out today because he'd sucked until today. He's got a track record of being bad 3 of his 4 games in the NFL. So we'll talk about Wiley, and he did have a good day, and he deserves his praise. But one good game does not a good tight end draft pick make, and we'll discuss that later. William saying, sorry to you, JT. A more earnest sorry from William here. Asking you if head coach Zach Taylor of your Cincinnati Bengals should be fired. I think fired is certainly a step too far, but do you want to, at the top here, give us an address on the state of the Cincinnati Bengals?
You know that one picture of like SpongeBob and Patrick like holding open the coffin and it just says like get in. That's
right.
That's the Bengals playoff hopes right now. And I tweeted that out earlier. Yeah, it's honestly like people didn't want it and I wanted it and people didn't want it. But when Jamar Chase said Joe Burrow should sit out till week 5, he should have sat out till week 5.
That's what I was thinking about at the end of the game. I mean, the Bengals
have changed. Not really.
The Bengals playoff hopes were like their entire season was kind of dashed. It was scuttled in week 1 of training camp. Joe Burrow goes down with that calf injury that's been nagging him to this date and is going to continue to nag him and more than nag him, limit his ability in the pocket. And that's going to be a big part of our discussion today, trying to decipher what can and cannot fairly be taken from this game on the Titan side of things, because they were facing a diminished Bengals team. We talked on Thursday in our preview episode about how this was the most the least talented, or maybe that's the wrong way of saying it. Let's say the least dangerous version of the Cincinnati Bengals the Titans would be facing of the 4 times they've now faced them in the past 4 years. And that certainly bore itself out, in my opinion, on Sunday. They looked like they were a hamstrung version of the Bengals of the past 2 years, the AFC contending Bengals of the past 2 years. And so it made some things easier for the Titans, especially defensively. On the defensive end of the Bengals sideline, there are certainly some questions. Lou Anarumo, Big Lou, we're fond of him and the work that he does. He's a very underrated defensive coordinator generally of the past couple seasons. But today, he made a Titans offense look really, really good. How much of that was the Bengals defensively being inept, unprepared for the moment? And how much of that was Tim Kelly and Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry's offense finally starting to click the way that we thought it might a couple of weeks into the season? So all of those topics we'll get into. Let's start here at the top. And again, if you're with us live, appreciate you being with us here on a Sunday evening. Would love for you to be a part of the conversation. Subscribe to Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. Go to that YouTube page, find this live stream, join the conversation in the comments section like Deagle and Pretty Boy Lipschitz have already. Throw any questions or comments you have in there, like Pretty Boy Lipschitz wanting to talk about Travis Gibson. We have flagged that comment. We will come back around to Travis, I promise. my 10,000 foot perspective on this game, which is where I always want to start. Like I said, winners and losers article today just didn't happen because I sat for about an hour in the press box trying to write a winners and losers article. The winners column, the categories on the winners was very easy, not a difficult task by any stretch of the imagination. I was really having a stretch to come up with some losers. It's like, okay, the Titans run defense kind of stunk for a quarter and a half, and then it got better. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that, and it was kind of concerning. Ryan Tannehill threw an interception, but it was an arm punt, and they were already winning by a bunch of points. It really didn't matter. Okay, fine, whatever. One thing that I was trying to spin into a loser was along the lines of, was this kind of a mirage? Do they beat a bad Bengals team or a bad version of the Bengals team? And is this, a false boost of confidence for this Titans team? Because they beat a team that on paper, it's like, okay, the Bengals, yeah, contender, favorites to win the AFC North. But did they beat a really good team or did they beat a team that is in a really bad spot right now? Those are all things we're going to talk about, but they're not really losers. They're nitpicks on what was otherwise a really flawless performance for Tennessee. I will say, I got some funny predictions on Twitter, JT. I tweeted 30 minutes before the start of the game. Winners and losers today. What are we thinking are going to be the winners and losers in my column at the end of the day? I asked people to predict one of each. A lot of winner, Joe Burrow's health. No. Loser, people who expected Andre Dillard to rebound in any way this week. He did rebound. He looked bad, but certainly not game-breakingly bad like he did last week. Winners, T. Higgins fantasy owners. No. T. Higgins left the game early with a rib injury. I don't know what his production was at the end of his performance, but it wasn't much. You're muted, JT. There we go.
He had 2 receptions for 19 yards.
Okay, yeah, not great. Jake Robertson did predict Dillard for allowing only 1 sack. I do believe he allowed 1 sack, maybe 1.5. I'll have to go back and check. He also a hilarious downfield blocking penalty, which is just, Andre Dillard, such a good blocker. You can't blame him. That play took too long. A blocker of his caliber is just going to be downfield. That's just how that works. This is my favorite one from X Miller Time 9X. Winner Landry. I mean, not really. He was fine today. Better, but not great. Loser Josh Wiley. No. So those are just some interesting poor predictions on those people's part. My number one takeaway from this game is what I talked about last week. As I was discussing why there is an argument to be made that this Titans team should not be given up on by fans yet. And it is that this offense underwent 3 massive, dramatic changes in the offseason. They changed their offensive coordinator. They changed their playbook, their offensive scheme. And they reloaded with a majority of new personnel on the offensive side of the ball. So every element that is key, fundamental to offensive continuity year over year. I'd argue there are 4 big things: general personnel continuity, quarterback, offensive coordinator, scheme. They changed 3 of those things. And so I talked before the season and throughout the season up until this point about how I don't think it's crazy for folks to preach patience and not jump to conclusions on a Tim Kelly offense that hasn't really had a chance to click yet. And I feel like today, I'm not here going to take a victory lap on, look, the offense is epic. It's great. It's fixed. This is what it is. It's one game, right? We're about a fourth of the way into the season. We're just into October, the very beginning of October. A lot can and will change. But today, at the very least, Tim Kelly and his offense showed you what it can be when everything is clicking. And what it can be is a very efficient, similar to the version of the Titans offense we've seen in the past, a very efficient group that has explosive capability downfield, reliable conversion ability with sure-handed guys like DeAndre Hopkins, explosive players across the middle of the field like Chigakonkwo, and behind in the backfield, Tyjae Spears, who was a firecracker once again today. And when you keep Ryan Tannehill healthy, though he is a 35-year-old, relatively statuesque pocket passer at this point in his career, he is a guy that can operate from the pocket and move you up and down the field and score a lot of points. That's what this team can be. Now, the biggest question mark still remains this offensive line. And today they did fine. I'm not going to say they didn't do well today against what I still think is an underrated Bengals pass rush. Guys like Trey Hendrickson up front, they really did not impact this game the way that we saw them impact the game on Monday Night Football last week. So that was a good thing. And guys like Andre Dillard held their ground against guys like Trey Hendrickson, and that is good. They did allow 3 sacks on the day. Only one off the top of my head was in a really, really bad situation, like a drive-killing sack, right? You early on in the first quarter, you had that drive-killing third down sack where it was an obvious passing down. The defense pinned their ears back, knew they could get after the quarterback, did get after the quarterback, forced a punt. But beyond that, the sacks weren't exactly back-breaking, game-breaking in that way, and so that was a good thing. The Titans' defense, for their part, laid 3 sacks on Joe Burrow, so that was a good thing. All of these things were clicking today for the Titans, and you saw what I would guess is the best version of them. You could argue having guys like Burks back, having, if you get a healthy Kyle Phillips for a stretch of time, that adds a couple extra elements to your offense. But in general, you got the best version of this Titans team on both sides of the ball and on special teams, for that matter. Nick Folk still going strong, 18 of 18. Longest active streak in the NFL, by the way. Grandpa Folk cannot miss. Absolute nails kicking the field goals out there. Some numbers for you. Actually, before I get to the numbers, one more big takeaway, JT. The number one thing, as I was talking with some folks walking down from the press box to the interview rooms down underneath Nissan Stadium, was the general takeaway comparing week 3 and week 4, because it's almost like the scriptwriters this year have built this Titans season so far to kind of be a really nice case study week after week. We have these 2 weeks that like puzzle piece together and are the examples of really, in my opinion, worst case Titans team, best case Titans team. Like, this is what they look like when things are all going wrong, and this is what they look like when things are all going right. And so going forward now, beyond week 3 and 4, you've got 75% plus of the season left to play. How do you find a way to be mostly that things are working right version of yourself and not things are working wrong version of yourself? How do you combat everything going wrong the way that it did in Cleveland? And how do you come into games prepared to make sure things go right like they did against Cincinnati? That is their big goal now, because September, in my opinion, JT, and we've talked about this, it's about finding out what you can be, tinkering. The best coaches in history, the Andy Reids and the Bill Belichicks, they're not famous for their wins in September. They're famous for trying things out, figuring stuff out, and then being nails down the stretch, being an unstoppable force come November, December, peaking at the right time and getting into the playoffs as the best version of themselves. And so that's what this time of year is for. Now that the Titans have shown both versions of themselves, the number one takeaway from those 2 games for me is in the trenches, right? In week 3, the Titans lost in the trenches on both sides of the ball all day long, and they got crushed. They lost 27-3. It was never close. In week 4, they won in the trenches on both sides of the ball, and outside of the first quarter, it was really never close, and they did the crushing. Some things just never change in football, right? That's the ultimate takeaway, and this is not a revolutionary idea that, you win in the trenches, you win football games. Yeah, of course you do. But it's nice to have a reminder every so often that, hey, winning in the trenches is still very important. It's actually paramount to having really any success at the end of the day in the NFL. And when you do that, not only does it allow you more success, but it opens up your Pandora's box of opportunities wide open. The things at your disposal, the things that you can try, the things that you can do become, they multiply when you are winning in the trenches. And that's what the Titans did today. Now, some numbers. And this is, I think, mostly a reminder of just how much averages can change just 4 weeks into the season, because a 4-week sample size is a really small sample size. And that's, in the NFL, we're working on smaller sample sizes than in the NBA or the MLB. That's the nature of it. But you have to take these smaller sample sizes with a grain of salt. Our buddy Zach Lyons put out on Twitter just a couple of minutes ago the rankings for this team heading into Sunday Night Football. So not a complete week, but almost complete. The Titans' efficiency rankings look like this through this week of football. So this is not the full season, but just today and on Thursday night. They ranked 7th for EPA and CPOE, 9th in EPA per play, 8th in CPOE overall, 11th in success rate, 2nd in air yards, 5th in overall EPA, 17th in run EPA, and 5th in pass EPA, 8th in overall defensive EPA, 13th in run EPA, and 8th in pass EPA. Hilarious. The Titans were a better run defending team today, or excuse me, pass defending team today than they were a run defending team. As we've said all year long, the Titans secondary, the strength of this group. Before I continue to ramble, JT, and I want to give more thoughts on this offense and what we saw. Actually, let's start with the defense for that matter. Do we have any comments that we should be mentioning from the YouTube chat?
Not really about anything that we've covered yet, except when we are talking about a loser of this game. Roshan says that Andre Dillard, absolutely a loser, but basically the only one. So like,
well, it's a relative scale for Andre. Yes, he was still the worst player on the team. I think like we all agree. Yes, he's still a liability, but he was less of a loser than he's been in other games so far this year. And again, always the Sunday night caveat, right? Like I'm reserving any and all judgment of offensive line play until I get the all 22 the first couple of days of this week. And we talk about that more on Tuesday and Wednesday's episode, but for now, yeah, it seems like he had a not so great game, but not so great as it's been in the recent past. So that's a positive.
Yeah, and then a couple more here, since we're going to go basically right into defense, breaking that down first. We had a couple comments that we can segue into our defense discussion here. Mm-hmm. One by Pretty Boy Lipschitz, who says, I didn't think our DBs tackled very well early on. I would say so. I think it was a big reason of why the Bengals were able to make it down the field so fast like they did on that first drive and start off well. I think I
was about to say the defense just didn't really do anything well early on. Yes. That first quarter, they were really shaky, and the offense actually came out swinging a little bit stronger, a little bit more potent than the defense did. And that was kind of a curveball to beginning the game. You weren't really expecting that. And early on, it was like, okay, is this going to be it's going to be a kickoff? Are these defenses going to be allowing a ton of movement in between the 20s and then firm up in the red zone? And it's going to be Money McPherson versus Grandpa Nick all day long. That felt like it was going to be the case early on, and the doors kind of got blown off. But yeah, I agree that it was a shaky start for the defense. I mean, the thing that I had written down as a potential loser early on, as I'm taking notes in the game, was that run defense of the Titans. Through the first I think 3 drives of the game, I tweeted out that the Bengals were on pace. So I think the Bengals only had 2 drives in the first quarter. However many drives they had in the first quarter, this was the end of the first quarter. The Bengals were on pace for 136 yards on the ground at a 5.7 yard per carry clip, which was going to definitely be by far the worst rushing performance allowed by the Titans defense in recent memory. Certainly, maybe since the Saquon Barkley game in week 1 of 2022. I'm not sure. I think that may be the most recent. Maybe Josh Jacobs in week 3 or 4, whatever it was. But yeah, it was not great early. They firmed up. I will say I still generally find the running defense a concern from this game, because you know what really helps your rush defense look better on paper? Blowing the doors off of a team, and for 2.5 quarters of a game, they can't really run the ball anymore because they're chasing from behind. Like, that's going to do that. So they would have run, if this was a close game, wire to wire, I think they would have run for north of 100 yards. I think they would have had an efficient rating, because even late in the game, when they were down many scores and they were still giving the ball to Joe Mixon at times, he was chopping off some nice runs. Now, the Titans were playing some more cushy, softer defense and some prevent defense looks, but still, that Bengals, it's something about, because we talked about how Samaje Perine did this to the Titans last year when they faced them in Nissan Stadium. Something about the Bengals run offense is the Titans run defense, usually a very stout and fantastic group. It's their kryptonite. And don't ask me why. I do not know, but they do a good job of it. And so I guess credit to the Bengals there. And it raises some concern for the Titans run defense, but generally, I mean, I'm not too worried about it, because they, this is certainly an outlier performance for them over the past season plus of sample size. One guy that I wanted to talk about was Azeez Al-Shaair. And early in the game, they were utilizing him very differently, in my opinion, than how they had used him previously this season. We saw a lot with David Long with the Titans the past couple of seasons, where he was used in the pass rush game as kind of a heat-seeking missile, as a headhunter, see ball, hit ball, just uncork him, take the leash off, have him, just fly through a gap and get after the quarterback and F a play up was really the best way to describe it, right? We hadn't seen a ton of that from Azeez Al-Shaair this year, who came in. The understanding was he was going to be kind of that long replacement in that way. He had that in his bag. Through 3 games, he wasn't really doing that much. They seemed to take the leash off of him a lot more early on in this game. We asked Mike Vrabel about that after the game, and he said that was kind of their plan coming in, to just have another element of that pass rush game, see what he could do, get another backer in there. And it worked really well. He got, I think, 2 quarterback hits rushing the passer early on in the first half of the game. And so a good game for Azeez Al-Shaair for sure. The pass rush, for its part, came back to life. 3 sacks on the day. I've got the numbers here. I want to pull up their exact numbers if I can find it for the defense. Here we go. 3 sacks on the day. 6 tackles for loss, 9 quarterback hits, 5 passes defended, 1 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovery. So a really, really strong day for the defense. The guys that stood out, Azeez Al-Shaair in the pass rush, 1 tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 passes defended. Jack Gibbons led the team in combined tackles with 10. He was flying around, had 1 pass defended.
That one where he was just so athletic to get up
there. Higgins up the seam, right?
Yes. Yeah. The one where he was just athletic and was able to jump up and get that as there are a couple people in here who are T Higgins owners, like Deagle in the chat right now. As T Higgins owners, we are very mad today because Azeez Al-Shaair and Jack Gibbons kind of messed up our day, both in the red zone and just in general. So
that was going to be a big gain. I mean, it was a deep seam shot. I turned to who was I talking to at that point? Mickey Ryan from 104.5. He kind of when that play went off and Gibbons makes the play to stop a big catch and pass from Burrow to Higgins. And I'm just like, Jack Gibbons, like the kid. I like the player. Don't love that matchup just in general on paper. Not my favorite. Having Jack, I get why you have to do it. And we talked about how, with the defensive scheme that they run, this is a lot. You're going to get a lot of looks like that. You just have to. You have to have a linebacker that can hang in the seam with a slot wide receiver. And yes, I understand that. Does not mean that I have to like it. I did not like that, but good for Gibbons for making a play there. Some other guys that kind of came to life. Obviously, Autry gets that sack near the end of the game. Had a big tackle for loss and 2 quarterback hits in this game. He kind of came back to life. Travis Gibson is a guy that we had flagged to talk about. Let's talk about him a little bit. He's active for I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, this is the first game that he's been active for the Titans this season. There's been a lot of clamoring for him to be active in the past couple of weeks because of Harold Landry playing so many snaps, clearly not being ready yet, coming off that knee injury, not having that burst, that juice yet, or whatever it may be with him, where he's still working his way back. And understandably so. It's a weird situation where, you understand. I don't think anybody's really blaming Landry or like saying, oh, he's a bum, he's washed. This is part of how this works, right? We know this about players that come back from an ACL. But you also have to understand, like, okay, well, while he's still working through that, get him some reps, but he does not need to be on the field as much as he otherwise would be. Harold Landry, before he tore his ACL, was like a 99% snap share guy for 4 years with the Titans before he got his big contract and then tore his ACL. So pare that back a little bit. The Titans finally did today by making a guy like Travis Gibson active. He was more active, especially early on in the game. Rashad Weaver was in there more anecdotally. I felt like I was seeing him fly around more during the game, mixing more of some of those rotational edges in, and it was working well for the team. I felt like getting those guys in, giving them looks. Gibson, his stat line, he ends up with 1 tackle, 1 sack, and 1 sack for 8 yards. And a forced fumble. So a really big impact play from him. Excited to see what he can do, getting some more play, hopefully going forward. And so, yeah, the defense just as a whole, anybody in the chat that wants to bring up any other players that are worth discussing. I felt like the secondary did a good job. This is where we can kind of get into that discussion of, okay, Joe Burrow, it felt like he was getting the ball out as fast as humanly possible every time he dropped back. I tweeted out after the first drive, I'm guesstimating, but I feel like Joe Burrow, he had 4 completions, and I think he held the ball for all of 1.7 seconds. Like, that's what it was like all day with him. It was very funny whenever he tried to scramble. The one that made me laugh out loud was I think it was the first drive, the first down conversion where he needed 1 yard. And so he steps in the pocket, kind of shuffles 2 or 3 feet, and then slides down real awkward. That was really gingerly. It was like Grandpa Joe Burrow out there on the field gets the first down. And you feel for the guy because he's, in pain and going through what is clearly a very limiting situation. But a couple of those sacks the Titans had today, they were sacks that I feel like a healthy Joe Burrow squirms out of, or at least is able to stay on his feet long enough to get the ball off, thrown out of bounds, whatever it may be. Some of those QB hits he does not sustain. I think a lot of those plays get extended if he's able to, roll out of the pocket, make something happen. I was reminded by somebody in the press box that last year in the Bengals-Titans game, Joe Burrow had 9 rushes for like 35 yards. And so he was really a creator with his feet as well as creative behind the line of scrimmage with his feet in extending plays, extending passing opportunities downfield. That wasn't the case at all today. And so that's really the crux of this week's discussion is what can you really take away from this game? The pass rush worked, but they were going after a statue. The defensive secondary did a good job holding up against a really talented receiving core, but they were having to really just survive for 2-3 seconds tops on these plays that were not long, deep, developing plays downfield. They were short and intermediate stuff, so they could play more aggressive in that way. JT, what's your overall takeaway? And people that are listening live in the chat, give me your thoughts on what kind of a grain of salt you have to take away from this performance because of the limitations of the Bengals offense.
The secondary did their job today, I think, is kind of what I am taking away with it, because I think that you would have so many more downfield looks if Joe Burrow was fully healthy. But sure, because of that limitation, the secondary kind of understood that, and they did their job today. They did not allow a lot of things downfield or even after the catch. Like Jamar Chase was open many times, but once he got that ball, there were 3 or 4 guys on him.
I was impressed with the tackling, 100%. Yes. Yep.
And then also the only really explosive plays were little dump off passes to tight ends who were able to get 3 or 4 yards, but nothing that was really make or break on any drives. So I think with the secondary, at least, they did their job. They did it okay. I'm not going into next week now saying, oh, the secondary is fixed or the secondary is now getting better because of the limitations that it's a little bit of a grain of salt. But when they were asked to do what they were supposed to do today, they did it and executed well. So I think that's the best thing that they did today.
Sure. No, I think that's fair. And pointing out that the tackling and the swarming of the defensive secondary was well executed. The yards after catch ability was limited. Those opportunities were really limited by the Titans defense. So at least in that way, I think it was their best performance. But again, they were having to cover a very different unit than they, I think, otherwise would have. Just going through my notes here. Anything else on defense? Not really. We can move on to the offense, which was the star of the show today, and there's plenty to talk about there. Some general thoughts on this offense and some numbers for you. I will say for Ryan Tannehill, who we had some clips from Tannehill and Vrabel and Henry, they kind of glitched out on us. I don't know. It was
the weirdest thing.
It was bizarre. Go to my Twitter account.
Backwards, sideways, and upwards all at the same time.
They were framed strange and whatever. I don't know. It was an error. We were not going to play them. They're on my Twitter account at Easton Freeze. Go and find them there. There's plenty of insight from those guys on what happened and what went right this week that didn't go right last week. But I will give credit to Ryan Tannehill, who we've been kind of blasting for 3 weeks now about being an old man and not very spry back there, not athletic enough to move around. I thought he looked more athletic, more spry in the pocket. There were a couple of plays where he actually did create in the pocket, navigated it well. The one where he initially stepped back in the pocket to buy some time and then stepped up in the pocket to avoid a sack coming around the edge that was losing contain. I think that was where he converted the only 4th down conversion of the day, finds Tyjae Spears to sit down right there in the flat in the middle of the field, gets the first down. That was a play that was made possible by Tannehill's pocket navigation and athletic ability. There were a couple other times where he kind of cut loose, got out of a collapsing pocket, took off for a couple yards or threw the ball away. So he did not look super athletic, not super spry. He did not turn the clock back a decade, but he didn't look like a complete and utter, 45-year-old Tom Brady statue back there that you had to keep clean or else all things were doomed. So credit to him on that front. Some numbers that I was kind of just digging into as the game was going along, JT. The last time the Titans scored 3 touchdowns and a half, which they did in the first half today, it was week 4 last season at Indianapolis, which was exactly 364 days ago. So this is the annual where the 1 year cycle is begun anew. The Titans will not score 3 touchdowns in a half again until 1 calendar year from now. Hopefully not, but maybe. The numbers are indicating that may be the case. One thing the Titans didn't do today, again, this is a nitpicking loss for them. They go into halftime. It was 24-3 at half. They finished the game 27-3, only scoring 3 points in the second half. And so the Titans did not score 30 plus points today. It would have, if they had eclipsed that 30-point mark, would have been the first time since week 17 of the 2021 season, which was that 34-3 win over Miami at home at the end of the season. That's a 637-day, 21-game drought that is continuing now. And they were in field goal range there at the end of the game. Of course, it would have been very ungentlemanly of them to kick that field goal to the game was over. That's kicking a guy when he's down. Mike Vrabel's not going to do that. But they once again failed to do that. And so when will the Titans score 30 points again? It's going to have to come on a very rare day, it seems, where the Titans offense is clicking like that. And also the defense is struggling or they're facing a really potent offense. Maybe if the Titans are a good team by December and they're playing Miami in Miami, you could see it then maybe. I'm trying to think of teams they play. The Ravens could put up 30 points and the Titans, that Ravens defense is really good though. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of a team that they play this year with a really good offense and kind of a suspect defense. I would have said the Falcons.
I was going to say that's exactly who I was going to say.
Not a real person.
Hold on. What about a Heineke-led Falcons?
I'm in. I'm about it.
Maybe.
Let's see it. That's in Atlanta, I believe, right? Or
no, that's here because
that's here. Okay, so maybe even better for the Titans. So like maybe by then, or a Kirk Cousins led Falcons team by then. Houston.
If CJ Stroud keeps it up, maybe.
Sure.
Then.
I have a little bit too much faith in the Texans defense personally. Mm-hmm. But maybe they're not flawless. They're just kind of spunky, and I like them in that way. So yeah, some of the details on this team. Let's dive into some specifics. And again, if you're listening with us live, make sure you're subscribed to Broadway Sports Media YouTube channel, Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. When you're subscribed there, then go over to this live stream. You'll find the live stream of this show on Sunday night. You can be a part of the conversation in the comments. Would love to hear your thoughts on the Titans offense from this game now. And let's have that conversation. I want to start with the Henry Spears usage. And dadgummit, if I did not write this down, I'm going to see if I can pull it up really quick. This felt like another perfect split between those two players.
I believe it was Henry with 37 snaps to Tajay's 33.
Right as I found it. You bingo, 100%. So a perfect split there. Well done on your part with the memory. The rushing split was lopsided, obviously. Tajay Spears in on a lot of plays, but not getting the ball in handoff situations. Their final numbers was definitely Derrick Henry's best rushing performance in recent memory. He had 22 attempts for 122 yards, a very, very healthy 5.5 yards per attempt average. With that 29-yard long run, the touchdown run was it the last touchdown they scored in the first half or the second to last touchdown they scored in the first half? I think it was the second touchdown they scored in the game.
Let me check because I think that one was after the NWI one though.
Was it? Okay, you check on that. But regardless, one of the Titans' 3 touchdowns in the first half, near the end of the second quarter, Derrick Henry breaks out that 29-yard run. That was a vintage King Henry run. That was good for the NFL fan soul. It felt right. You felt the universe in balance in that moment.
To be honest, as I watched it there, like as soon as he did
it was right at you in the stadium too. It was right in that corner. As
soon as he did the stiff arm and he broke that tackle, I was like, he's going. Like this is in. Like there's no stopping him. He got all the way. So yeah.
But yeah, broke some tackles, was a run up the gut that he bounces outside once he's into the secondary, runs through some guys, lays the stiff arm, gorgeous, delicious. And I putting on my neutral. Who's I'm blanking on the dude's name. Who's the actor who wears the NFL hat, who wore the NFL hat to the San Francisco game? Rob Lowe, my Rob Lowe NFL ball cap. Like, that was a good time to be an NFL fan watching that run. And you saw a couple of vintage Derrick Henry runs today. It's crazy how, and I wish we had the stat pulled up, JT. Earlier, I think it was last week, we were talking about how on average he was being met around 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage through 3 weeks, was getting like 1, maybe 2 steps before running into some contact, which is not conducive with success for Derrick Henry and his running style. Crazy how today the Titans run game got back to some basics, ran a lot of pitch plays to Derrick Henry that were working well. Some off tackle stuff, some duo, some zone running, some classic Titans rushing success, Derrick Henry bread and butter run plays that were working really well for them. And it makes you, it excites the Titans fan today, but in retrospect, it makes you wonder, what were you doing? Not working some more of that in previous weeks. I know that game script kind of dictates different things, but there were certainly some opportunities for them to do some more of that old school bread and butter stuff to get the ball rolling. Again, this team really capitalizes on play action, and I can't wait for the play action split numbers to come out tomorrow or Tuesday. But today was another day where they ran a lot of play action, and it worked really often. And a big part of that is because they were establishing the run. Now, the analytics nerds will tell you don't have to establish the run, play action to work. I'm not sure that's exactly the case. I'm not sure I buy that. Maybe you don't have to establish it as a dominant force, but you have to run the ball to some effect. You can't be completely futile in the running game and expect for play action to get defenses to bite. There's just no way that's the case. Logan pointing out in the comments, short pitch, though, versus wide pitch. Yes, and we were asking Derrick Henry and Mike Vrabel and Ryan Tannehill about this after the game. They were kind of they weren't really biting on the whole, what was different about the short pitches to Henry, and Kaharski was really trying to drive this point. At one point, he turns to the rest of us, the media. He's like, am I crazy for thinking that these pitch plays were kind of different? No, Paul, you aren't. It wasn't that they were, he was trying to say they were like kind of sawed off, shorter pitch. Like, really, it was just pitch plays, but they weren't outside the tackle runs. They weren't long developing, wide swinging pitch plays that are longer developing plays and trying to get on the outside to get the edge. They were doing some kind of, it was kind of a merge of a pitch and a shovel pass on the inside in that way. And it was working well. It was some off tackle, inside the tackle, off the guard runs off of the pitch for Derrick Henry that were being run very well. Logan also brings up in the comment, by the way, the 10-minute drive to start the second half was maybe bigger than getting the 3 points to start the third. It's certainly bigger than getting the 3 points to start the third. It may be the single most important drive of the game, because when you eat up 10 minutes of clock coming out of scoring 2 kind of back-breaking touchdowns in the final 3 minutes of the second quarter, you're up by multiple scores. You're getting to double dip because you get the ball back after the half. This Bengals team is on the road. Their offense has been sputtering. They need points now. And you just munch up 10 of those minutes, 10 of the 30 minutes remaining in the game to start the second half. You only get a field goal out of it. And to Logan's point, the 3 points were way less consequential to the outcome of the game than the actual 10 minutes taken off the clock there, leaving the Bengals with 20 minutes left to come back to score 24 points, a 3, maybe 3, arguably 4 possession game at that point. And so that really forces their hand. That was a really, really big part of the game. Some other numbers. Oh, by the way, got to shout out Derrick Henry here, who took another page of the history book today and ripped it up a little bit. He surpasses Earl Campbell today. Once he hit I think it was 77 yards he needed rushing today to surpass Earl Campbell, which he had in spades, 122 yards on the day, for the second all-time Titans rusher in franchise history. He is now trailing only Eddie George, who has 10,009 total rushing yards as a Tennessee Titan / Houston Oiler / Tennessee Oiler. I think Henry is around he's just north of 8,000 yards. So he's got like 2,000 yards left to catch George. We'll see if that happens. But Henry has now become just the 6th player in NFL history, not Titans history, NFL history, with 8,000 yards rushing and 80 rushing touchdowns in their first 8 seasons, which is made even more impressive by the fact that Henry's first 2.5, 3 seasons were really lackluster, and he was a backup during that time. So well done for Henry, a big milestone for him. He was very humble about it after the game, wanted to give the credit to his blockers.
And also just total rushing yards in his career, he has 8,620.
Okay,
and now,
so a little bit more than I thought.
So a little bit more, but the Titans now are the only team in the entire NFL to have 3 rushers go for more than 8,500 yards in franchise history.
They're the what? They're the only team?
They're the only team.
Repeat that stat one more time for me.
I believe, and let me go check this because I have it back here, but they're the only team to have 3 rushers have more than 8,500 yards in a franchise.
Wow. Yeah, I mean,
which makes sense with Eddie George, Earl Campbell, and Derrick Henry.
It checks out, and you get CJ2K in there, and you got the Mount Rushmore of, no pun intended, Rushmore, the Tennessee Titans, an elite, if not the elite, rushing team of all time in NFL history. A fantastic rushing organization. Who else should we talk about? NWI. How about Nick Westbrook-Ikhine? It remains the silliest thing of this Titans season. Really not close, in my opinion. That folks, smart folks, we're talking earnestly in July, late into August, about how I don't know if Nick Westbrook-Ikhine's roster spot is really locked up on this team. There's some, Reggie Roberson's kind of flashed in the preseason, and I listen. I was on the Roberson train, hand up. I was not on the no NWI train. I like Roberson. And Chris Moore might be better than NWI. Mason Kinsey continues to be an available stalwart player in the preseason. Does he get the nod? Colton Dowell is in the mix. They drafted him. They'll probably want him on the team. Kieris Jackson has flashed. Potential special teams possibility. Like, there's a number of guys that could take Nick Westbrook-Ikhine's job. Ridiculous then. Really ridiculous now. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has quietly had a really great season by his standards. And it's crazy how when you put a wide receiver 3 or 4 into a wide receiver 3 or 4 role in the NFL, they excel at being a wide receiver 3 or 4, which is what Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has always been. He's been bad and lackluster and frustrating in the past couple seasons because the Titans' entire offense would be dead by week 7, and he'd have to be wide receiver 1 for 4 weeks, and he's not good at that. It's not what he does. He's not built for that. When he's a wide receiver 3 or 4, that's what he's good at. That's what he's built for. He's capable of doing that. And so he goes and he does that, and he does it well. I wrote down his stats for the season so far through 4 games. And in one of these games, he had no catches for no yards because the Titans put up 3 points and 94 total yards of offense against Cleveland last week. So really in 3 games so far this season, NWI has caught 12 of 16 balls thrown his way for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. JT, NWI has 2 touchdowns. The rest of the Titans wide receiver core this season, how many touchdowns do they have?
I believe none.
None. 0. NWI has been a reliable, really nice player. What's the word? Serviceable. He's a useful player. He's a very useful player. He's not great. He's quite good. He's quite nice to have around. When he's got a relationship with Ryan Tannehill like he has, which is a very, very good one, they work well together. You can tell at times he is a security blanket for Ryan Tannehill. He's a need 3 or 4 or 5 yards. Come and get 3 or 4 or 5 yards. That's what NWI is, and he serves this team well. Logan says in the comments, NWI make big catches. Yes, he does. Is he a perfect receiver? Not even close. Is he a nice receiver to have on your team when he's slotted in correctly? 1,000% yes. So good for NWI and good for the Titans for keeping him around and not listening to the nonsense hype around him not being worthy of being on this team.
Let's talk about one more guy on the offense. I guess we kind of buried the lead of our first one here. Let's talk about Josh Wiley.
All right, let's talk about him. All right, so Josh Wiley, pulling back up the numbers here. Josh Wiley on the day.
2 receptions,
2 targets, 2 receptions.
2 receptions, 33 yards.
26 yards.
26 yards.
According to what I have here.
No, that's right. No, that's right.
Okay, 26 yards and a touchdown. His long was a 24-yard. So one big-time reception for 24 yards right up the middle. Yeah, I don't know if it was a 3rd down or not, but it was to get the Titans deep into the red zone. And then a touchdown catch. His first, we asked him in the locker room, did you ever think that your first touchdown catch would be a pass from Derrick Henry? And he said, definitely not. No. We gave him a hard time because the Titans line up out there. They have Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill and Jeffrey Simmons in the huddle, and you're like, they're on the 3 or 4 yard line. What's going on? What's the plan here? What kind of tomfoolery are we up to here, Tim Kelly? Ryan Tannehill runs out as the wide out, motions out to the sideline. Derrick Henry in the king cat formation, as we've become accustomed to seeing him. Jeffrey Simmons in the backfield initially, I believe, then motions out as the right side tight end, as a lead blocker, one would assume. You're like, what is going on? What's the deal here? Cincinnati calls a timeout because they don't like what they're seeing. And it's infuriating at first because you're like, that should be illegal. For Cincinnati to have robbed us of seeing what kind of nonsense was about to occur, that's the rule of cool dictates that shouldn't be allowed. You shouldn't be allowed to call a timeout there. But the Titans, it's steady Eddie. They decide we're going to run.
Double down.
Don't worry about it. Double down. Exactly. We're running it again. They get the guys back out there. Okay, same situation, same exact play. At this point, JT, you were in the stands. I'm in the press box. There are 69,000 people in attendance wearing all different shades of two-tone blue and Cincinnati black and orange. What percentage of the people in that stadium are thinking Derrick Henry's probably going to throw a touchdown here? Be careful. This guy's probably going to throw.
Like 85%?
Most of them?
Yeah.
Most of them, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, we've seen this more times than I can remember. He is very much there are, I think, 3 different tight ends, if you're classifying Jeffrey Simmons as a tight end, in on this play, who are all liable to leak out and take a very easy little touch pass, jump pass over the top for a 7. The Titans have done this. It has worked for them every single time. Watch out. They will do it again. And the Cincinnati Bengals, despite calling a timeout, somehow fall for it. I asked Tannehill, I asked Henry after the game, I asked Josh Whyle after the game, how are these cats still falling for this? How are they still falling for it? I don't understand. At this point, they're like, every 8 games, the Titans pull it out, and every 8 games, they get a free 7 points from it. I get that, like, yeah, the response from Henry and Tannehill was, well, you got to respect, Derrick Henry, it's a jumbo package. You got Jeffrey Simmons in there for crying out loud as a lead blocker. You got to respect him running the ball in. But we talked to Josh Whyle. I asked him, is there a plan B there? Is there a situation, like, what happens is there a read for Henry to not pass? And he said, no, either the ball is coming my way or the play doesn't work. So, like, I'm not sure I totally buy. Yeah, Derrick Henry, he can create. Maybe he just forces his way in there anyways. But the play, in my opinion, is set up for him to pass and nothing else. Derrick Henry himself said before I asked him, so sorry to cut you off, but I'm calling BS on this. Okay, I'm peeved that they would lie to our faces about this. I asked him in the press conference. I said, Derrick, are you surprised people are still falling for this? Are you surprised at this point you're still getting away with it? And he said, no, they got to respect the run. But right before I asked him that, he said that I'm forgetting. It's either he said this or Whyle said this, but one of them said that the coaching instructions on this play was either you throw to Josh Whyle or you send that ball 7 rows deep into the stands. There is no option C, carry the ball. Derrick could go off script, I suppose, but that play is designed to throw the ball. That being said, why are they still falling for this? It blows my mind.
Well, the funniest thing was after Josh Whyle catches it, the 2 linebackers look at each other with their hands being like the Spider-Man pose of like, you were supposed to have it. No, your job.
Yeah, no.
So like, it is quite funny that it continues to happen.
And if the answer truly is they're getting away with it because teams have to respect their ability to run or pass there, my counter is, okay, well then if you're inside the 5-yard line ever, shouldn't that be your play call every single time? Like, if it's really that broken of a play, if this is a tush push level, unstoppable, unguardable play, then why are you not running it all the time? And I think the obvious answer is that it's not. It's just one that they do a good job of spreading out week over week. And just even though it's one of those things where it's like when we're betting sometimes in the Best Bet Gauntlet, and it's like you look back on a bet that is a bad beat on a Sunday evening, and you're like, I swear we talked about this. I said I wasn't going to bet that team. I know I shouldn't have bet that team. I know I shouldn't have bet them in that spot. Of course. What was I thinking? I was a moron. Like, I clearly was not thinking when I made this pick. And yet, in the moment, it's like the shiny object. You get a little ADD. You get a little squirrel. Derrick Henry, the possibility of him from the king cat formation with Jeffrey Simmons as a blocker is enough of a mental it's a mind trap of, well, they're going to run the ball. Oh, they're still going to run here. They're still and there's the pass and there's the touchdown. So a funny play, Josh Wiley's first touchdown. We somehow managed to turn the segment in the Josh Wiley segment into why this play is so broken. But
like the point here is that Logan is also pointing out, as he says, let's calm down on Wiley. If he doesn't have that seam catch, nobody's talking about him. I still have my questions about Josh Wiley. I'm not ready after a performance that really, when you break it down, is like one reception for 24 yards. Like I'm not ready to walk back my takes on Josh Wiley.
Sure. And to like, not that this is necessary here, but just for continuity's sake, I have to, in your defense, point out that the biggest reason why at draft time, pre-draft, we wrote an article and you wrote a segment of the article about why Josh Wiley would be a bad fit for the Titans was about the fit with the Titans and less about him as a player. Now, I don't think you were very high on him as a player in general, but the reason you wrote what you wrote was because we didn't think his skill set was exactly what the Titans needed. And we still kind of think that his skill set may not be what the Titans need unless he proves us wrong and is a viable blocker. And so that's why I have to say here at the end of the Josh Wiley talk, if I had to list players I'm most curious to go back and watch this week, like I want to rewatch the broadcast. I want to rewatch the All-20. I want to watch the All-22 for the first time. I know that Josh Wiley is in more and Wesco is out more in this game. I don't know how much Wiley was in to block. Anecdotally, I saw him doing it on occasion today, and in the past, I haven't seen him do it as much. I want to go back and see, was he blocking? Was he filling in roles where Wesco was doing those things in previous weeks? And if so, what did it look like? I might come back Tuesday and be like, wow, Josh Wiley had a hell of a game. Good for Josh Wiley. Well done. You know what? Maybe he is going to be something for this team. Or maybe I'm going to be like, yeah, it was 2 catches and one was a big one and it was up the seam and it was a nice catch. But other than that, it was kind of nothing. So TBD, I think, is the consensus on Josh Wiley until Tuesday. JT, anything else in the comments we need to discuss? Zach says the JT vibe check, chair is high, mood is high. Zach, it's interesting. I agree with you. I appreciate you coming in with these advanced analytics each week. I will say that's strange. Maybe he's by dearth of being on this show and being invested in the Titans. He has reached full football analyst status and is able to compartmentalize when his team loses. And he's got it. Maybe JT, do you feel like you have your analyst hat on right now and you're pushing down deep within you the upset with the Bengals? Maybe it's just apathy at this point.
I'm a company man. I see the numbers and I say, good show. Like it. Very good.
It's a very good, very nice.
No, I've been analyst all day, even at the game. Like I did not cheer once. I was like, I'm just watching for the play, just to play.
That's what I like to hear. No cheering in the press box. No, JT says no cheering in the stands.
Yeah, no, not me. Couldn't be me. I'm an observer of the game.
He's a connoisseur of the sport. Kenneth says, I'm almost positive that Wiley outsnapped Wesco. I'm sure Tron Davenport, who has the snap counts each week, has that out there on Twitter. I just don't have it up right now. All right, JT, how about we get to some Titans news and we get out of here? What do you say?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, this is the news with producer JT.
Yeah, so thanks for calling it the news, because there really, what else is there to say about the Titans? But there is a bigger important note that the Titans are now tied for the division lead.
Who are they tied with?
2 wins. I believe they're tied with the Jaguars.
I believe they're tied with everybody. Everybody in the AFC South is 2-2. They are actually technically last. Now we're going back. Zach pointing out. Thank you, Zach. He didn't outsnap. 24 for Wesco, 18 for Wiley. So a relative, closer to even, but not outsnapping him. Okay, good to know. But anyways, the AFC South, the Titans technically in last right now because every team in the AFC South is 1-1 in the division, as well as 2-2 overall. Except for the Titans. The Titans have not played any division games. They'll get their first divisional matchup against Indianapolis in Indianapolis next week. So that'll be a big game for them. But because you don't have any wins in the division, you are technically in last place. But yes, the model of mediocrity so far, the AFC South, 2-2 across the board, a blank slate. And the Titans, in terms of season long, it feels like it's crazy what 8 hours can do between noon and right now at 8 p.m. on a Sunday. But at noon, there was a lot of talk on the heels of a week where there was a lot of talk of Titans, maybe they pack it in earlier than later. Maybe I know that the beginning of the Titans 10 article this week that we write, JT, was this season could get out of hand for the Titans sooner than later. And here they are tied, a blank slate, a 0-0 game in the race for the AFC South, which is the primary goal in any NFL team season is to win your division. And they have an opportunity to do so. They are 2-2 through 4 of the 6 games of their 6-game opening stretch, which I still feel confident that this is probably the most difficult portion of their schedule. We find out some things about teams. They kind of even out. Like I think you face a more difficult Browns team than you were expecting, but it levels out. You get a easier Bengals team than you were expecting. I think next week they're facing a more potent, sneakier Colts team than a lot of fans thought they may be facing in week 5. The Ravens team seems to be off to a really great start. So I would still argue the hardest part of their schedule, if they can get out of it 3-3, 2-4, I think that they're 2-4 would be disappointing if they lose the next 2, but 3-3, I think you're in pretty good shape looking at the back half of the back 2/3 of the season. What do you think, JT?
I mean, with kind of how a lot of these teams are shaping out. I mean, the Steelers do not look good. They have to play them later this season. Falcons. The Falcons are, as we'll talk about here in a second, are kind of a disaster. Houston is always one where you feel like you can maybe get 2 wins, but at worst, you kind of feel like you can walk away with a split there.
Right.
So like you're starting to feel pretty good because despite the Jaguars today, they still have to play teams like the Bengals. They still have to play teams like the 49ers. They still have to play a lot of other teams that the Titans do not have to play.
Yep. They play the Bills in London this upcoming week, a big game for them. But just totally anecdotal, or not anecdotal, but off to the side here. I have to mention it. Did you see the Jaguars are pulling the London doubleheader right now? Yes. So they're in London for 2 weeks in a row, right? They played today against Atlanta. They've been in their team hotel all week preparing for this. They now have to move team hotels for this next week. Do you know why? Because the Buffalo Bills booked their hotel that they're currently in for the week.
I see.
I don't know if this was gamesmanship on the Bills' part. If so, well done. But yes. Oh no, Logan saying the Jets suck in the comments. I don't know. I'm scared to check the score of that game.
I'll tell you in a second, buddy. It's
okay.
Rough.
Okay. All right. We'll talk about that later. Okay. What else do we have in the news today?
Let's talk about the AFC South roundup, and we'll go over the scores here. Just say what went right for these teams, what went wrong. First of all, with the Jacksonville Jaguars, they do defeat the Falcons 27-3 today. Trevor Lawrence looked like Trevor Lawrence, 23 of 30, 207 yards and a touchdown. Desmond Ridder, he's just bad, man. Like 19 of 31, 131 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Now that I think about that, I probably just put the the Titans Bengals score there instead of what the actual Jaguars Falcons score was. Just as a slip here, but
Freudian slip.
Sorry. Switch the numbers. Scratch that. Reverse it.
Flip them. Yep.
The Jaguars won 23-7. So a little bit of maybe some dyslexia kicking in there, but either way,
sure.
Yeah, either way, Desmond Ridder is not good.
He's not real. He's not a real quarterback. He's not. I'm not sure he's a real person. He's going to get Arthur Smith's job taken away if Arthur continues to stick with. I mean, like you have to do something. You have to try Heineke. You have to be a player in the pre-trade deadline market. You have to do something. They are quickly approaching Jets territory of you cannot stick with this quarterback or you're going to lose your job. Am I crazy for thinking this?
I don't disagree with that. However, I think that there's a bigger plan in mind. I'm still on they are going to trade for Kyler Murray at the end of this season and roll with that next season. That's still my take that I've had since the beginning.
What if it's mid-season? Josh Dobbs still clearly a starting caliber quarterback.
Well, I just don't think Kyler Murray will be able to play at all this season, to be honest. I think.
Sure. I'm just saying, why don't they go ahead? I mean, like, I don't think it's crazy to think they may deal him before the deadline.
Yes,
sure. Why not?
I got you. Not? Yeah. But who else was kind of non-existent today, or we questioned their existence? Kyle Pitts. Still.
It's been more than today, pal. Yeah.
Just did not exist today. we do know that this game was kind of coinciding with a Toy Story-esque animation game with Disney Plus today. And if Kyle Pitts was a Toy Story character, he's Wheezy left up on the shelf, collecting dust.
Wheezy's a good take. My initial thought when I was trying to find a character for him was, the mangled Frankenstein toys that are underneath Sid, the bad guy's bed, that come out and scale. I thought that he was like the baby head with octopus arms. That's Kyle.
Or maybe he's the fishing hook or the fishing rod with legs, because he hooks you in every fantasy season.
The Barbie leg. That's great. It's what he is. You should tweet a picture. The Barbie legs, like the long, sexy legs with the fishing line. That's what he is. Yeah, to fantasy players, 100%.
Well, the only reason we bring this up is because he was out-targeted and out-received by Titans legend Jonnu Smith today in London.
Hey, good player, nothing you can do. Jonnu Smith, elite player.
So
nothing you can do.
A tough break for him. Moving on, we'll talk about the Colts, who lost to the Los Angeles Rams today, 29-23 in an OT thriller. Anthony Richardson went from getting me garbage time fantasy points to looking like he was going to win this game.
QB1.
He continues to be that dude. Went 11 of 25 for 200 yards with 2 touchdowns, and then had 10 rushes for 56 yards on the ground with a touchdown. Continues to just absolutely just light it up when he's available.
JT, as connoisseurs of the sport, as we talked about earlier, I know that you and I are it's delicious. It's so good watching CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson in the AFC South so far. Both of those guys look really awesome so far. They look like it's gonna be fun watching them for a long time. It's so early, and maybe they don't pan out, but so far so great. Those two organizations have to feel great about their choices in quarterback, and for the Titans part, they have to. There's some added pressure there for sure.
Yeah, and then Houston stomps the Steelers today, 30-6, where CJ Stroud continues to look like rookie of the year.
Yes.
His performance today, he went 16 of 30 for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then a little stat that Adam Schefter put out just a little bit ago, Texans rookie CJ Stroud has 1,212 passing yards this season and surpassed Andrew Luck and his 1,208 passing yards for the second most passing yards by a player in his first 4 NFL games.
Wow.
Only Cam Newton with 1,300 had more. Stroud
is hilarious. Cam Newton was throwing it around the yard like that. I have no recollection of that. That's amazing.
Stroud is also the second quarterback in NFL history with no interceptions in each of his first 4 NFL starts, minimum 30 attempts in each start. Can you guess who he joins here, who did it in 2019?
Was a rookie in 2019?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's his first 4 starts. I guess he couldn't. It's not exactly a rookie, but this is the guy who started 4 games and didn't throw an interception in his first 4.
Was it? I don't know. What was it? Minshew? Was it Minshew?
It was Minshew.
Okay, it was Gardner Minshew. There we go.
You know ball.
I do know ball. It took me a second.
And then
glad that worked out for me.
Yeah. So bottom line, it seems that the other 3 AFC South teams have found promising rookies to take them, or promising quarterbacks to kind of lead their franchise for the foreseeable future. We'll have to see if Will Levis or Malik Willis can join them in the near future. But
don't you love job security, knowing that we'll have content next offseason? Who's it going to be?
It's great. I love it. It's absolutely great. And before we get out of the news segment here, we just got to talk about DTR, who made his first start today. You and I are both proponents of DTR, and Logan will not shut up about it in the comments here.
Okay, first of all, Logan, shut up about it, but I'll tell him what I told him behind closed doors. If you think DTR's performance today is a reflection of his ability, you're a hack, you're a poser, you're a fraud. Okay, put in a horrible position. Didn't know he was starting until today, as far as I'm aware. Didn't get any first team reps or preparation during the week. Put in a terrible position against a very, very smart defensive coordinator for the Ravens and a top 5 defense, in my opinion, the Baltimore Ravens have. So it's going to happen. He was put in a blender, an untenable, impossible situation. I have faith that DTR's career only gets better from here. This is the worst that you see of him.
And finally, let's run down the best bet gauntlet that once again had another fantastic week. The best bet gauntlet after this week is going to be 26-14, with Easton getting back on the board, going 4-1 today.
I needed that like I needed air,
Myself,
friend.
I went 3-2. My vibes picks are now 1-1.
Now, we're assuming that the Jets don't backdoor cover here, which
currently the score is 17-0 with 13 minutes left in the second quarter.
So a lot of game left. Not great, but you never know.
So we'll either be 26-14 or 27-13, depending on tonight's game. Once again, another winning week for both of us. I have not had a losing week this week, or since the season started.
I too have not had a losing week this week, if we're being technical.
But we continue to make you money. So if you're not following along with us, I don't know what you're doing at this point.
Yes, this is the pitch, right? At worst, through 4 weeks, through a month, which is a 40 game sample size. At worst, 26-14. That is 65%. That is multiple percentage points clear of professional betting levels. If you're not betting with the best bet gauntlet, you're not trying. You're not trying to make money. Like it's really that simple. We're not flying by the seat of our pants. We're not the guy you follow on Twitter who's like a football analyst who just throws out some picks for, content. Like, we put serious time and energy and hours into researching these things during the week. We take it seriously. We bet real serious money on our end. And we make real serious money on our end, and we'd love for you to be a part of it and tail us. Will we finish the season at 65%? I don't know. At this point, we kind of seem like a runaway train. I'm sure we'll hit a hitch in the road eventually, but so far, so great. And we talk about job security. We may just quit our job. If we finish this year 65% or better, we may have to quit.
Hey, we're on, as Logan just pointed out, we're on our way to backdoor covering, as Jawan Taylor has a face mask in the end zone, which means safety for the Jets. 17-2.
Let's go.
We're only 6 points away, baby.
Let's go. 17-9 final score. Backdoor cover. Cash it. I can't wait. All right. Is that the news for today, JT? Is that all?
Yeah, that'll be it.
All right. That is the news with producer JT, and that is our show today. Appreciate everybody joining us live. A kind of disjointed but fun recap episode of the Titans Bengals. We'll have a much more traditional, much more put together, much more informative version of the Hot Read podcast coming to you live on Tuesday afternoon, as always, in your podcast feed and on YouTube first thing Wednesday morning. And then, of course, Thursday afternoon, we'll be live at BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse in Spring Hill, watching a fantastic Thursday night football game. The playing teams, I forget, it slips my mind. I remember it being an awesome game. Don't even look it up. Don't worry about who's playing. Just come and watch them with us. Please, we need friends to watch this game with. It's going to be a disaster. But we'll be there live. We'd love for you to come out. We're doing gift card giveaways almost every single week. If you come and you show your face to us and you say hello, I know who you are. I like what you do. I hate what you do. I don't care. Just I'm familiar with who you are. Easton Freeze, JT Runke. Nice to meet you guys. I'm here because I know that you're doing the Hot Read podcast. We'll say, that's so cool. You're the first person of the day to come say hi. Here's free food. Here's a free gift card. Go treat yourself. Have some delicious food on us. I don't know how else we can sell that. Other things that we need you to do before you go, please subscribe to Broadway Sports Media YouTube page, Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, it's right underneath the video right there. Click subscribe. Also subscribe to our podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, on Google, on Stitcher, all those places where you get your good podcasts. We would love for a 5-star review on podcast. Haven't asked for that in a while. If you can leave us a 5-star review, that's super helpful for us. And then follow us on social media at Hot Read Pod on TikTok, on Twitter, on Instagram. A lot of great content going up each and every week on those accounts. All right, JT, until Tuesday afternoon, I'll talk to you then. Talk to the good folks that are listening with us then. Have a great Victory Monday. Great start to your week. For producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. This has been the Hot Read Podcast. We'll talk to you later.